En daarom verbonden met studio vanuit Red State, Tennessee, Catherine Austin Fitz herself. Ms. Fitz, welcome. Your first.
Fabio, great to be with you.
Hi. Your first reaction to the results, please.
So this is not surprising. The reports coming in from the early voting around the country reflected what we see in both the Electoral College and the popular vote. You have a Republican landslide with not only the Republicans taking the White House, but taking the Senate and improving their position, it looks like, in the House, though we don't have the final tally for the House. And this means that the new president comes in with a mandate for great change. And I told you earlier, what will happen today, the real campaign starts today. Because the president has to fill 1,000 very important positions, which will then fill 10,000 positions. And if you look at the deep state and you look at what the people want, everybody's trying to get their people into position. And it's not clear, which side is going to win the personnel. And there are a couple of major issues. Obviously, the new president can't do anything until the January 21st, but they can have an influence on what's happening both in the current administration and with people around the world. The Trump still has many different lawsuits to deal with. Yeah. And how those lawsuits, both civil and criminal, are going to play out, is yet to be decided. And there's a real process that has to go on that's going to put a lot of controls on the president. The second thing is you have war in the Ukraine, war threatened with Iran in the Middle East. And we know many people voted for Trump because they were hoping that we could turn that situation down, and go back to trading instead of making war. And so there will be real pressure on the president to indicate which way he's going. And we don't know. We don't know yet if the president is serious about changing the deep state or simply facilitating a new phase of the deep state. Until we see what he's going to do on the wars, until we see the staffing, and until we see him talk about or bring transparency. So, for example, he promised in the first administration that he would make public the Kennedy files and then decided not to. And if you listen to his reasons, he believed that was the responsible thing to do. Now he's saying he's going to release them. And those files could have a dramatic impact on America, not just politically, but culturally.
Yeah, that's the main question is here. Is he going to drain the swamp? And so what are your feelings around that question?
So it's very interesting. If you see some of the people around the president, they're the ones who really do want to drain the swamp. But if you see many people around the president, they're the ones who are building the swamp. So if you drill down to some of his policies, for example, promoting digital IDs and using election fraud and immigration as a reason for a digital ID, or you see his promotion of private crypto in a major way involved in the federal finances, if you see his attacks on civil service and want to swap in private contractors for the civil service, I would say that's building and expanding the power of the deep state. So there are going to be a couple of key issues. He got us out of the WHO before. It's imperative he get us out of the WHO again. Will he do that? Will he get us back out of the Paris Agreement as he did in the first administration? So you're going to see, when I say the campaign starts today, you're going to see a real competition between the people around him who want to build the deep state. The big issue in America right now is the central bankers would like to assert much more control over fiscal policy and achieve much more transparency. Much more independence than they have under the law. They're still accountable to Congress. And they're going to work hard to get Trump to help them do that. And stripping out the civil service and replacing it with big tech will help them do that.
Interesting you said, because earlier you mentioned that the corruption is not in Washington. What do you mean by that?
So if you look at the dependency of the American economy on organized crime and war, the deep state is not something that happens in Washington. It's something that happens within the cash flows of every county in America. So the 3,100 counties and 50 states, and those counties and states are highly dependent on the machinery, the financial machinery of the deep state. And so the corruption, whether it's organized crime or war, is really bottom up. And many people in America say they want Trump to reduce our dependency on organized crime, reduce our dependency on money laundering. At the same time, they're not prepared to deal with the financial ramifications if he does. So if you're the president, you walk into the Oval Office and your political guy is going to say, well, Mr. President, the American people have spent billions to get you elected. Now they want their government grant. They want their government purchase. They want their community block grant. They want something that's going to come to them through the budget, whether appropriations and federal credit. And you're going to turn to your Secretary of Treasury and say, okay, well, how do I fund this? And he's going to say, well, you better be nice to the people who control the war machine and the organized crime cash flows who launder the money. So you are highly dependent on a machinery that the American people continue to want the money.
Yeah.
So how does the president change that unless 3,100 counties are willing to change their dependency on it?
Good question.
Right.
Yeah, because basically it's not up to Trump.
Well, here's the thing. Where you get really powerful change, and we've seen this in the last year, is where you get an alignment between interests in Washington. So you get a couple of really great congressmen. We still have some very good legislators, both in the Senate and House, and where you get alignment between them and the state legislators, the governors, and the AGs. So one of the reasons you saw real support for the Republicans, if you look at the great freedom fighters across the country, in the treasurer's office, in the AG's office, in the state legislator's office, in the governor's office, what they will all tell you is if we have a Republican White House, we can get far more done in terms of turning the machinery. So where you can get that alignment between the states and the state officials and the president, and you get popular support, that's when you can start to turn the machinery. Without those alignments, it's not going to happen.
David?
Hi, Catherine. Yeah, I was wondering, how much power or influence do you think Robert Kennedy has?
So it will be interesting. Say the most important thing to watch is what are those 1,000 people who are picked, particularly the top 10 positions. And what the co-chair of the transition team has said is that Kennedy's influence, or the influence Kennedy would like, is to have a say in how those positions get filled. And so we will see as we watch the transition unfold. Trump has made clear, he interviewed with Joe Rogan right before the election, and he said, you know, I love Bobby as long as he stays in this lane. He said, I hate him on environment because I love oil and gas and Bobby doesn't. So he said, Bobby's got to stay in the health lane. But so far, Trump has indicated, you know, as long as Bobby stays in the health lane, he will have a lot of influence. Now, what that means, we will know when we see what positions get staffed and how they get staffed.
Well, you know him very well, Bobby F. Kennedy. So what do you think he's going to do now?
So I think he's going to make, if you look at the results state by state, if you look at how the election worked, I think that the Kennedy group had a major hand in delivering a real Republican landslide here. And which is interesting because they tried very hard to work with the Democratic Party and coordinate with the Democratic Party, and were resoundingly rejected, and that's what put them over on the Republican side. But so I think he's made a major contribution, and he is going to try and get his people into place and fight for certain policies. But again, it's all going to come down to whether they get the right people in place in the next 3 months. And will Congress approve them? Remember, many of those positions are approved by the Senate and have to go through Senate confirmation. So you need enough alignment between the Senate and the, what the Trump team and the transition team want to do for that to happen.
Yeah, how important is it to have the Senate and the House in this case?
Very important. Very important. Yeah. And that's good news if Trump wants to get us out of the WHO, get us out of the Paris Agreement. But if Trump is here to sell on behalf of the central bankers, sell us on a all digital financial and monetary system, and on a digital ID, and all these other sort of mechanics that they need to finally snap the control grid into place, then we're in real trouble. And that's why I say the campaign begins today.
David, would you like to reflect on that?
Yeah, well, I was wondering, Whitney Webb posted today on X, the people who have been deluded into thinking that the deep state is purely partisan are in for a big surprise again. She wrote, pay attention to policy action over rhetoric now that the election is over. Whitney Webb warned us for the CBDC and the digital ID. Do we have any idea of Trump's position on cases like the central bank digital currency?
I could not agree with Whitney Webb more. She's been giving great coverage on all of this. And if you look at what Trump has said on the digital ID, I think it's very and deeply concerning, and Whitney understands that and has covered that extensively. And so we need to be watching what Trump is saying. If you look at the different pieces of what I call the digital concentration camp that's snapping into place, Trump has been on the wrong side of many of these specific points. We do not want an all financial monetary system. We do not want a digital ID. And the last thing we want is somebody, auditing or running the Federal Reserve who is on record as wanting to put a mesh network in the back of your head and hook you up to satellites. So I think, again, what you see around the president is a multiple personality disorder of people who want to build the control grid and are deep in the defense industry like Musk and Peter Thiel, but also people like Kennedy who would like to see freedom and are sincere about that. And the question is, who will win those 1,000 seats and who will win in the policy set in the first 90 days? And if the freedom fighters can win, can they get enough people in the Senate to go along with them?
Interesting combination, Musk and Kennedy, David.
Yeah, my last question about this. How can we resist this kind of dangers globally? Because it's a global problem, the central bank digital currency, the digital IDs.
So the first thing we can do, and I think this is what BlackBox has done a tremendous job of doing, is bring transparency. Because we do know the president likes transparency. We do know he will take on open debate and discussion of all of these issues. That's one of his strengths. Yeah. And I think the more we bring transparency and the more we can point out the multiple personality disorder, and he knows this. He ended up with the wrong people in his administration and suffered as a result. One of the reasons he did not as well in 2020 as he might have. So I think the first and foremost thing we have to do is bring transparency. I will say this, because of the Constitution and the way the United States legal system works, there is a tremendous opportunity, given the strength and the pushback that's coming in the states, for the U.S. to, bottom up, try and turn the machinery. We've been racing toward central control, and there's now a real pushback to turn. And I think if we can get the media, like a BlackBox and like the groups represented here, and the people working for freedom across Europe, and working together to help turn that, we have a mighty voice to bring. And I for one, am very, very optimistic.
Is 4 years enough to get to that transparency? To get to
I think if we really wanted to, if we really worked together, we could get that transparency in a year or two.
Yeah, and do you contribute to that in any way?
I've been doing everything I possibly can since the financial coup started in 1998. So the central bankers started to take over control of the fiscal line in 1998. That's what we've been grappling with. And I, for one, and the Solari team have been doing everything we can do to help people understand. There are many people fighting for freedom, but they don't understand central banking and how the nuts and bolts of the financial system work. And that's where we try and come in.
So please stick with us for the next subject, because there's a lot more to ask about other things.
Okay.
Thanks so far. Please stick with us. En jij bedankt. Dankjewel, David Boerstra. Deze bewogen verkiezingsronde deed Amerika en het systeem op zijn grondvesten schudden. Wat zijn daarvan de toekomstige gevolgen voor Amerika zelf en bovenal voor ons? We spreken het verder met voormalig assistent-minister Catherine Austin Fitts. Catherine, welcome again. Welcome back.
Okay.
Again. You are in Tennessee right now.
Yes. Yes, I am.
Yeah, and you traveled through 23 states for the last few weeks and months.
Yeah, and given what I'm going to do in the next week, I think it's going to be 26.
Yeah, so what are your main findings?
So here's what happened. In 2020, people said, they got afraid. They were worried about the pandemic. They were worried about their health. But by the end of 2020, they said, something's wrong here. And then in 2021, they said, we need to do something about this. And 2022, people started to organize to take action. And those actions, whether they were lawsuits or change in state policy or organizations being started and coming together, really blossomed in 2023. And at the beginning of this year, when we did our annual wrap-up on the Solari report, I called it Operation Pushback. And something very miraculous is happening and very marvelous. And that is literally people all across America and all across the world are saying, something? What we value is freedom. And this is not okay. We will not go along with central control. And you see the pushback developing as more and more people realize that with digital technology, the people running the central banks and the people governing the different countries of the world literally do want to assert central control. So when Klaus Schwab from the World Economic Forum says it's 2030 and you have no assets, they're beginning to understand not only is he serious, but if you look at the different mechanisms like the WHO that they put together to basically relieve your assets and your rights, people are beginning to see the mechanical nuts and bolts of how they intend to operationalize the vision of relieving us of our freedoms and our property rights and our assets. So as more and more people see that and realize it's really that, I search to find the right word, it's really that centralizing, they're starting to act and find each other and act together. So we are seeing the push for central control go even harder, but the pushback, it's almost like, I don't know if you know what a game of Texas chicken is, when two cars will go at each other at 60 miles an hour and see who swerves first. So we call it Texas chicken. And there's a big geopolitical Texas chicken happening. It's one of the reasons so many people around the world are interested in this administration, and why I say if you look around Trump and what he says, there is a multiple personality disorder, because these two arcs are going at each other and coming together, and there needs to be a reconciliation.
Yeah.
And so are we going to do the WEF's reset and go to a world where we're in a digital concentration camp? Are we going to do what I call the building wealth reset, where we simply evolve as a society to a much more prosperous and human civilization, enjoying the benefits of new technology?
Yeah. Is this system between Democrats and Republicans still sustainable, in your opinion? And what are the developments around that system?
So one of the most remarkable things to me that happened during this last election is a friend of mine was running in Ohio's 7th Congressional District, which is Cleveland and right below on the lake. And his team did a survey of the 18 to 25-year-old voters in that congressional district. And what they discovered is that 4% had registered as Democrats, 4% had registered as Republicans, and 92% had registered as independents.
So that's between the age and 18 and 25, so the younger generation. 18
to 25. But what the young people are saying is, we've had it being tricked between, the two sides of the uniparty. What they're saying in a political sense is, our food choice is not McDonald's and Burger King.
Yeah.
We don't want to be captured within a phony duopoly. We're breaking away.
Yeah.
And our theme this morning on Money and Markets was breakaway, because what I see all over America that is so exciting to me about having done we call it the Financial Freedom Tour, is I see people at every level of society, from the very wealthy and accomplished, to the janitor at the local grocery store.
Yeah.
People are breaking out of the paradigm, and they are ready for real change, and they are willing to work for it.
So this sounds like massive changes coming for America.
It's not coming, it's here. We're in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you very much. Live from Tennessee, Catherine Austin Fitz. Very nice talking to you. Thanks for all your information.
Okay, well, I'm homesick, so I'll be back in the Netherlands on the 25th, and I can't wait.
Are looking forward to have you here in the studio.
That would be great. You guys have a great day, and thank you for all the great work you're doing.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. Deel jij nou ook onze zorgen over de toekomst van onze vrijheid en het vrije woord? En durf je deze video wel aan je familie en vrienden te laten zien? Deel de video dan op je sociale media en help Blackbox de wijde wereld in. En nu je toch zover bent gekomen, abonneer je ook even op ons kanaal, want alle beetjes helpen. Dankjewel.